Good afternoon and welcome to the next installment of Argent's webinars. Today's webinar is Office Ergonomic Workstation Assessment. My name is Dave Moore. I'm one of the loss control consultants on staff at Argent. This webinar will address a couple different things. The first, how to assess office workstations for common risk factors that are associated with workstation design problems that lead to injuries. Second of all, how to prioritize workstation equipment and the needed adjustments to optimize productivity and safety. Next, I'll present some biomedical evidence behind ergonomic concepts for sound office workstation design, and I'll also speak to some recent trends in office workstations, such as standing work desks, active seating, and treadmill workstations. This is because people have a lot of questions about these sitting devices recently. Before we start, we must kind of define what is ergonomics. It is fitting the worker to the human workstation. This includes tools and equipment used such as the chair, desk, input devices, monitor, etc. Also, the work environment characteristics such as the light, noise, and what other types of work processes are occurring near the employee. And also the particular jobs or tasks being performed. Are they word processing, drafting designs on AutoCAD, invoicing, or working on Excel spreadsheets? All of these variables will influence the human and their work, which will alter technology that is needed and how it is used. This is just as important when designing or evaluating an office workstation as it would be for a production line in a manufacturing environment. Yet, often, little thought or investigation is invested into the office workstation design. Here are our goals for office ergonomics. We want to increase productivity, decrease human errors, decrease injuries, and increase employee comfort. Almost everyone probably already knows that ergonomics can reduce employee injuries. As an example of how ergonomics can increase productivity and reduce errors, I want to share the results of a study from Cornell. Cornell University researchers found that by increasing the office temperature from 68 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, workers' typing errors fell by 44% and their typing rate increased significantly. Alan Hedge, the study's author, also found that the results also suggest that raising the temperature also will save employers about $2 per worker per hour. This is due to decreasing the amount of electricity used to run the air conditioning. This study illustrated how ergonomics directly influences productivity and operational cost. Yet, there is so much more potential in other ergonomic areas. Someone may have a neck or shoulder complaint, but it may be due to how they're sitting. If we only assess their shoulder, we may have missed that they are reaching too far forward with unsupported arms, which are causing the muscle fatigue in the shoulders, yielding the problem. Also, just as with any other work process, office ergonomics should be assessed to optimize employees' productivity and to reduce errors. While workstation evaluations can prevent injuries, they can also improve performance. Let's walk through some foundational workstation assessment components. I chose to discuss a few common workstation assessment areas that I have found to be the most common problematic areas. Before we begin, I wanted to review what we have generally been told about the ideal workstation interface and what it looks like. The pictured employee is sitting straight up. The angle from her back to legs, also called a hip angle, is about 90 degrees. She's a very upright and rigid appearing. This looks great on a poster, but is simply not realistic. Humans need to be able to move when they're sitting. It is not realistic to sit in one position for lengthy periods of time. In addition, since these are seating recommendations that came out decades ago, there has been new research that supports movement and a more relaxed and varied posture when working. Therefore, we need to rethink about what good seating looks like. Now let's look at some seating. The chair is the first component of the workstation to assess for a good reason. It is the most frequent workstation issue that I find. Think of the chair as the foundation of the workstation. If there is any problem with the seating, it will often influence other aspects of the workstation. Many employee complaints of discomfort are directly related to the chair. As I will discuss later, there are often adjustments to the chair that the employee needs to make that they are completely unaware of. Most employees do not know that their chair can be adjusted in certain places. Start by having the employee move back from their desk so you can see and visualize how they are sitting in the chair. This is the starting point. Here are the main assessment points. Is a low back, or also known as a lumbar, fully supported? Are they able to sit with their feet flat on the floor, or are their feet on a footrest that are also supported? Is there about a 2 to 3 inch clearance behind their knee to the edge of the chair? Is their hip angle from 90 to 135 degrees? I'll discuss this in a little bit more detail later on. Are their shoulders relaxed? Are the arms supported and about parallel to the floor? And finally, is their neck in a neutral posture? So in this above photo, we can kind of start out with those elements I just discussed. How does his back look? It looks like it's firmly supported. His entire back is contacting the backrest. It's very well supported, I would say. His feet are flat on the floor. It's kind of hard to tell in the photo, but you could put about 2 to 3 fingers behind his knee, and it would not touch the leading edge of the seat of the chair, which is good. His hip angle is probably about the 130-degree range. I'll discuss that, as I said, a little bit more later in depth. His shoulders look relaxed. His arms are supported on the armrests, and his neck is quite neutral. Overall, it looks really good. Now, look in the picture on the left again. The yellow line shows an approximate 130-degree hip angle. The hip angle has been shown to produce the least amount of compression on the low back discs and is recommended. It is still common to hear about sitting at a 90-degree hip angle, but this is outdated. Also note that in the picture on the left, he has good back support, while in the picture on the right, his upper back and shoulders are contacting the chair, but his low back or lumbar spine is not. To have good back support, the low back needs to be contacting the back of the chair. Therefore, the low back is not supported on the picture on the right. Also note how his head moves forward from both seating positions. Sitting like the picture on the right can aggravate cervical spine conditions. Another person to look at. Note the low back support. There again, his low back is touching. The top of the seat is a little bit low for him, but his low back is still supported. His wrists are supported on the pad on the front of the keyboard, which is a very good sign. He is sitting upright with about 110-degree hip angle that is not apparent in the photo, but his feet were flat on the floor. He looks like he's sitting square to his keyboard, which is lined up with his primary monitor that is placed directly in front of him. Overall, this looks good too. Yet another example, his low back is supported. He is sitting upright in about a 100-degree hip angle with his feet flat on the floor. His arms are supported on the armrest and also on the keyboard tray. He has an undermount keyboard tray which lowers the keyboard to a great height so that his wrists are in a neutral posture. He is primarily working in Excel, so he's using the mouse more than the keyboard. This looks good. After viewing the employee seated in the chair away from the desk, have them move back to their desk and begin working. Then assess how they interface with their workstation while working, which may likely change things. Keep in mind that people will move and work differently when they know that they are being watched. This is called the Hawthorne effect. Because of this, you can also observe them at a later time once they have relaxed and resume their normal work routine if possible. Assess if their posture in the chair has changed due to their work. Look for the same previously mentioned elements, as well as now including an emphasis on their upper extremities and neck. Does the desk interfere with the chair? Can the employee sit with a fully supported low back while working? Can they do this without reaching excessively forward or to the side? Are their shoulders hiked up? And are their arms supported while they're working? And there again, it's really key and important to realize, is their armrest function compromised by the desk and the chair interfering with each other? Now let's review some of the common problems that we find. This is often what you see when the armrests interfere with the desk. People sitting out perched on the edge of the chair with their back unsupported. This often also makes them lean forward towards the monitor and reach excessively. This is the most common problem that I see in office workstations. Sitting with the back unsupported results in muscle fatigue that breaks down posture. The excessive leaning and reaching often is accompanied by unsupported upper extremities that leads to hiked up shoulders and neck and shoulder symptoms. This is especially true with people under 5 foot 5 inches tall. Also note how the employee is twisting at the neck to view the laptop screen, which is an issue. In addition, her mouse is located far away from her body on the right-hand side and needs to be moved as close as possible. This is the same situation on this slide. Here, the desk armrests are actually higher than the desktop working surface. This photo also illustrates why boardroom-type chairs with fixed, non-adjustable arms are not appropriate for a workstation. They lack adjustment and are very likely to have this problem. Keep in mind, though, that when someone sits in the chair, it will lower to some extent. This is possible, and that it may lower enough to clear the underside of the desk, but in this case, it did not. Sometimes a desk can be elevated to provide a higher desktop surface, such as in this photo. It was a taller employee sitting at an older desk that had a lowered keyboard tray surface that was non-adjustable and interfered with their knees. They secured the bottom of the desk to 2 4x4s with bolts for a solid and stable connection to elevate it. While this was a solution, they likely could have swapped desks out with a shorter employee. It did make the workstation fit this employee, however. The photo shows that there is absolutely no room for feet or legs under the desk. The seat of the chair actually rubbed on the bottom of the drawer, too. So it was physically impossible for anyone to sit at this desk unless they were sitting on the edge of their chair with their back unsupported. I didn't even need to have the employee sitting in the chair to determine that this had several issues. In this instance, I recommended that the drawer under the countertop be moved to the right side of the counter to gain approximately 5 inches of space to allow the employee to sit in front of the monitor, in addition to relocating the objects that were blocking feet and leg access. Often, network cables and power cords are an issue under desks. They cause obstructions, creating tripping hazards, and can be damaged by the chair's casters running over them. When this is seen, I recommend that they are secured to the underside of the desk. The photo shows one example where the surge protector was mounted to the inside wall of the desk. Surge protectors and power strips generally have provisions for being mounted with screws. An alternative is to use zip ties. Either option is very inexpensive and will also create longer cord length if needed for sit-to-stand desk or to provide more movement for devices so they can be moved or relocated over to a larger area on the desk. Once we have established that the employee can sit at their workstation unencumbered and with good posture, let's assess their shoulder and arm posture, which are often related to arm support. On the left picture, we can see that she has her forearms supported on the desktop. This worked for her, yet I was concerned that her forearms had contact stress by resting on the edge of the desktop surface, which is always a concern. We could have raised her seat up higher to lower the angle of her arms to reduce the potential contact stress, but then she would have needed a platform to place her feet on. The photo on the right shows that the laptop was elevated about 4 inches to facilitate a better seating posture, which it did. However, the change left her without any upper extremity support at all. This likely will cause shoulder and neck fatigue. In addition, note how her chair with non-adjustable arms does not interface with the desk. This forces her to sit at the edge of the chair without back support. How long do you think she can hold that sitting posture without becoming fatigued? Note the before and after photos of this employee at the same workstation. In the before photo, a pencil drawer interferes with her ability to bring the chair fully under the desk. Note how her arms are straight out in front of her when typing, which is not a good condition. Also note how in the before picture, how her shoulders are hiked up as compared to the after photo. Also not a good sign. After removing the pencil drawer, she could sit closer and was able to support her arms in the desk, which was comfortable for her. Notice how her shoulders are relaxed in this photo. The arms need to be supported, but not always by the armrests. The desktop surface is fine as long as the arms are not resting on a sharp corner and it is comfortable for the employee. What do we see in this before picture? The employee is sitting out on the edge of the chair since the arms would not fit under the desk. She is processing invoices and needs a lot of countertop space for this work. She is under 5'3", and the desktop surface was simply too high for her. Therefore, we use an under-desk keyboard tray to lower the keyboard height, decreasing the reaching distance, and provide arm support. Note how the chair's armrests are even with the keyboard height. This allows her to move with supported arms while seated back squarely in her chair with good back support. We also switch chairs out since the first chair's armrests on the left would not adjust low enough for her. Often, a chair that fits one employee poorly will fit another somewhere else in the organization. Now let's take a look at monitor placement from the employee. Ideally, the monitor should be placed directly in front of the user. If there's a second monitor, it should be placed to either side of the primary monitor. Although it's very common for people to split the difference when using two monitors, it is recommended to center the primary one that is used the most frequently. In terms of monitor distance from the employee, there is a rule of thumb. Generally speaking, having the user reach out in front and touch the monitor with their thumb is about the ideal distance. This tends to be about 20 to 25 inches away. The top of the viewable portion of the screen should be at about eye level. Anyone wearing bifocals or trifocals or has any visual conditions will likely lower this height as well as the tilt of the monitor. The important part here is to find what is comfortable for each employee. If you see someone that tilts their head back when viewing the monitor, that is a concern for cervical spine health, and a monitor height change may be necessary. Note how the monitor is centered on the keyboard. I added the yellow line to accentuate this. The primary monitor needs to be square as shown, with the keyboard and chair. Add additional monitors off to each side while keeping the primary monitor centered. In this instance, a document holder was added to the other side. The employee ideally would be sitting centered on this yellow line as well. In the before photo, we can see that the standing workstation and how it looked. This is a shipping and receiving desk in a warehousing environment. The employee was complaining of neck pain, so I was called in to assess the workstation. As seen in the picture, she clearly has her head tilted back, and the monitor was way too high for her. In this instance, a smaller desk-mounted monitor was replaced with a much larger wall-mounted monitor that was installed too high on the wall that lacked height adjustability. We temporarily moved the monitor back on the desktop until an adjustable wall mount could be ordered and installed. This first shift workstation user was about 5'2", while the second shift user was over 6 feet tall. The original monitor height worked good for the taller employee, but clearly not for the pictured employee. The lesson learned here is that workstations need to be adjustable to fit all users. The computer at this workstation is used to verify quantities and shipments, and word processing is quick and well under 4 hours a day. If the word processing here would be 4 hours a day or more, I would recommend that the desktop height be changed, lowered for the employee. Note how her hands are above her elbow level and her forearms are resting on the edge of the tabletop. This is not a good design, and the tabletop surface should be lower. An alternative here would be to use an adjustable height keyboard tray that both users could raise or lower to improve the workstation fit. When using multiple monitors, there is not a primary monitor used. They should be arranged symmetrically. Ideally, these work environments will also be adjustable and even have sit-to-stand capacity or capability, since these workstations are much more posturally demanding. Also note the glare on the monitor screens in this photo, which is a concern. Both of these photos show workstations with dual monitors placed at high angles and not centered in front of the employee. This adds a lot of postural stress to the neck and should be avoided. In addition, it is often more visually taxing. The employee on the phone in the left photo would benefit from a headset, especially if she uses the phone frequently. The employee on the right-hand picture has her neck twisted substantially. Also note how far out on the edge of the chair she is sitting. Her keyboard is quite far away from her as well. Multiple monitors complicate matters, but try to keep them at eye level if at all possible. In both of these photos, the lower monitors are in good positions, yet the upper monitors could be lowered or relocated to either side. Too much light is often a problem. The glare created by bright light not only causes eye fatigue, but also will cause people to change their posture to avoid the bright light. In the above photo, you can clearly see the overwhelming amount of light. This wall of windows spanned the whole office and about a dozen people were affected. While it is preferable to have light approach from the side, as in the photo, in this case, it was far too intense. They needed shades or blinds to filter out the amount of light coming into the environment. Also note that there is a chair mat on the hard floor surface. Chair mats are useful on carpeted surfaces, but are not needed on hard flooring surfaces. Now that we have reviewed assessing the common problematic workstation conditions, let's review some of the best practices with office furniture. First thing is to talk about BIFMA. BIFMA is the Business and Institutional Furniture Manufacturers Association. BIFMA is a trade association for business and institutional manufacturers and develops, maintains, and publishes safety and performance standards for furniture products. They participate in the creation of international furniture product standards, monitor and influence the application of national codes, and educate customers on the significance of standards and codes. BIFMA sponsors the development of safety and performance standards for business furniture, including cast chairs. BIFMA also has standards for other topics such as formaldehyde content, sustainability, and specialty seating, such as for educational and healthcare settings. I would strongly recommend that any furniture you purchase be BIFMA certified. When working with vendors, specify BIFMA certified products and you will eliminate many problems related to office workstations. I will focus on office chairs here, since these are generally the most problematic components of office workstations. Look for a BIFMA label or seal on the bottom of an office chair. The current standard is the BIFMA 5.1 office seating standard. Another good sign is to see a chair that has at least 7 adjustable features as shown in the picture. If you see a chair that has this many adjustments, it likely will be a higher quality chair. Let's review some of the chair's core features. The base of the chair is the very foundation of stability. Because of this, the base of the chair needs to have 5 or 6 more spokes. Chairs with only 4 spoke bases have a tendency to tip, which is a major safety concern. Chair casters are also specific for carpet or hard flooring surfaces. You should be able to specify which flooring type you have so the appropriate caster can be added to the chair. In general, how much seat pan length you require is directly related to your height. Therefore, shorter people need less seat pan length while taller people need more. If the seat pan is too long for your personal height, you can expect to feel increased pressure behind your knees. It may also force them towards the edge of the seat, which prevents the user's back from being fully supported, which is a very significant concern. Inversely, without enough length, the user may experience a lack of support, which will force contact pressure on the smaller surface area on the back of their thighs, creating an undesirable high pressure area. A good rule of thumb is to have a user seated completely back in the chair with their low back completely supported and contacting the backrest and still having 2 to 3 inches of clearance from the forward edge of the chair to the back of their knees. If you look at the photo, you can tell that this gentleman, who's probably over 6'2", had not enough seat pan for his thighs, and he was very uncomfortable in this chair. The next desirable quality is the seat height adjustment. The majority of chairs available do not meet the height range that's recommended. However, there are different cylinders available that can easily be switched out that will raise or lower the height range of the chair. This allows shorter and taller users to use the same chair. Lumbar support is another term for back support. Lumbar support is one of the most important ergonomic qualities of a chair. As with other components, adjustability to fit the user's different shapes and sizes is very important. Every chair is also different, offering a wide range of support. At minimum, at the very least, the seat back of the chair should have a basic curvature to support the spine. However, a generic design will not do a lot of good since every person's curvature is a little bit different. Still, some support is certainly better than none. A single axis adjustment is a term used to describe a seat back that allows the curvature to be adjusted in a minimum of one direction. In most cases, the curve is going to be able to go up and down. This allows the user to move the basic curvature up or down depending on the overall height. A dual axis adjustment, as the name would imply, this means that the back is moving on more than one axis. As in a single axis adjustment, the seat will move up and down. However, the extra axis of movement means that the seat back can also move from side to side within certain boundaries. Lastly is the asymmetric adjustment. This is the best possible option for support and comfort. This type of support basically divides the lumbar support into two pieces along the line of the spine. Each piece is then able to be independently moved on either axis. Next is seat recline. Very few people sit completely still in the chair. This is actually a positive, considering that movement is not only relieving pressure to the spine, but also facilitates blood flow. A recline angle of 20% has been shown to reduce total spinal compression stress by up to 40%, which is a really good thing. At a minimum, a chair should have a single pivot tilt, which allows the back to recline. A better option is a synchronous tilt, which also tilts the seat pan when the back tilts to prevent increased pressure on the bottom and thighs. The best option is a 3-point pivot, which adds a constant lumbar support to the synchronous tilt function. Next are armrests. Each arm generally makes up about 10% of someone's total body weight. If this weight is hanging loosely or supported incorrectly, it can lead to considerable amount of stress and pressure on the shoulders, upper body, and neck. When the arms are held in the same position for an extended period in a static muscle contraction, it can lead to muscle fatigue, which ultimately causes injuries. This is often the first step towards a repetitive strain injury. Headrests are important for people that have existing spine conditions, especially if they have a cervical or neck condition. This chair shown is not adjustable. It would be more desirable to have adjustability offered in a chair that had a headrest, but some chairs don't have it. Lastly, materials are very important. Some people want a mesh chair because they tend to get hot in chairs with foam seats and backs, and a lot of people are asking about mesh chairs. This is a consideration, yet I have seen several mesh chair backs fail by stretching out, even at 2 years of age and service. A good warranty is more essential with a mesh back chair to prevent the need to replace failed chairs. Also, the chair's material needs to be durable. Less expensive chairs will generally have seat foam that breaks down much faster. Just like with other purchases, you often get what you pay for, so invest wisely. A team approach is needed with various aspects of an organization to really have a good furniture purchasing procurement plan. This would include your purchasing, someone from HR, safety, or engineering, someone from maintenance facilities, and perhaps someone from IT, depending on the size of your organization. These people working together will do a much better job of procuring furniture that will better meet the needs of your organization. Important with this, too, is the employee input and engagement, which I will talk about. One way to accommodate this is to have a fleet of chairs. And a fleet of chairs may not only be one type of chair. For an example, an organization may have a base chair for their employees, a chair for employees under 5'5", a chair for employees that are over 6'6", and a chair to accommodate obese employees. Sometimes these chairs can have the same base components that are interchangeable with each other. For instance, the height range of the chair can be changed by switching out the pneumatic cylinder, converting a standard chair to a short or tall chair. The cylinder may cost $50, which will prevent the cost of purchasing an entirely new chair. Another advantage of purchasing higher quality chairs is that they generally come with long warranty periods, which will prolong the service life of the chair. Many chairs that break are simply thrown away, and no one takes the time to investigate if a warranty exists that will replace the chair. In my experience, warranties are vastly underutilized. Here are some great tips when purchasing chairs or other office equipment. Spend your money where you spend your time is kind of a common phrase. And since most employees spend the bulk of their day seated at their workstation, it would make sense that the chair is very important and thus would demand better investment in terms of purchasing decisions. Local brick and mortar vendors provide extensive services and have experience with setting up organizations with office work systems. Online-only retailers often lack product knowledge, which can lead to poor purchasing decisions that end up costing more money in the long run. Two underutilized services that brick and mortar vendors provide is product setup and employee training in terms of how to use and adjust the products. Equipment communication is very important. Make sure employees are using the technology that you provide. Sit-to-stand desks are not a good investment if you don't use them to stand. Assess if employees use them. Have them trial new technology at a hotel workstation where they can trial out the equipment. Here's what my organization does. This is a photograph of a roving message board that shows up in the cafeteria showing that people that are interested in using a standing desk, if they're not interested in using it, they can basically turn it back in. And the organization actually monitors people to see if they're actually using a sit-to-stand desk, because a sit-to-stand desk costs about $450, which is about as much as a new office chair costs. So it's a pretty substantial investment. So as an organization, it makes sense to survey your employees and ask them if they're actually using this technology to know and understand that you have made a good purchase investment. Employee training cannot be overemphasized. In almost every situation that I get called into, there are adjustability features that are not being utilized since employees do not know of their existence. Just like with any other work equipment, training and awareness of office work system use is very important and underutilized. Also, what happens when a chair breaks? And what determines the service life of a chair in your organization? Look at these two photos. Both of these chairs are very hazardous. The one on the left is outside. You can often tell the chair is in bad shape because it gets put out where the smoking area is, as in the case here. This chair is clearly dangerous. There's a broken caster. It's in horrible shape. It needs to be thrown away. The chair on the right at first looks decent, but closer examination reveals the right armrest has been removed. It was removed because the chair wouldn't fit underneath the desk, but in this type of chair, the armrest provides structural support to the back. So this chair actually was a hazard, and I recommended that they remove it from service. But the important thing here is to determine and evaluate your chairs and other office equipment for when it becomes hazardous and when to get rid of it. I spoke before about chair warranty issues. The picture on the left shows a broken cylinder that has been haphazardly fixed by adding 2 pairs of vice grips. This is very dangerous. The chair has at least 6 adjustment provisions and likely had a warranty. The cylinder can also easily be replaced, generally without tools. The second photo on the right shows an example of when the mesh back chairs stretch. The user rubs up against the hard plastic, as can be seen by the arrows, which causes several problems. A warranty would solve this problem. Sit-to-stand desks have been around for over 20 years, mostly in mechanically adjustable forms with cranks or counterbalance adjustments. In 2012, a paper entitled Sedentary Time in Adults in Association with Diabetes, Cardiovascular Disease, and Death, Systemic Review and Meta-Analysis, was published in the journal Diabetologia. This meta-analysis study looked at 18 studies, 15 of which were moderate to high quality. The researchers concluded that sedentary time is associated with an increased risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cardiovascular all-cause mortality, with the strength of the association most consistent for diabetes. Various non-scientific media latched onto this and begun the concept of sitting disease and coined the phrase, "sitting is the new smoking." This spurred various stories in the media, escalating the topic. In 2015, a consensus statement entitled "The Sedentary Office, a Growing Case for Change Towards Better Health and Productivity" was published that recommended standing and light activity for between 2 and 4 hours a day, and additionally that seated-based work would regularly broken up with standing-based work use the sit-to-stand desks, or that taking short active standing breaks. Yet this was not a scientific paper or based on evidence. One of the paper's authors also failed to declare that he owned a sit-to-stand desk company. Therefore, like with any other sources of information, you need to assess it for validity, credibility, reliability, etc. before adopting it. The current evidence suggests that, in general terms, people need to sit less and stand more, along with incorporating more movement. This is based off of the work of Dr. Joan Vernkios at NASA, whose body of work has demonstrated that we need to engage our anti-gravity muscles frequently. These anti-gravity muscles are the muscle groups needed to resist the effects of downward force of gravity on our bodies, such as the quadriceps, back extensors, and many other muscle groups. Her work shows that the number of times a day that you counteract gravity is more important than for how long you counteract gravity. Movement is a determining factor, not simply standing. This leads us to the common recommendation of getting up and moving every 20 to 30 minutes while altering postures frequently while sitting or standing. People ask me a lot about therapy balls or Swiss balls as a seating device. There are probably several problems with these. The most concerning are people fall off of these and get hurt. Also, many of these balls will pop, and when they pop, they often deflate suddenly, like when a balloon pops. Research also shows that productivity decreases sitting on these balls, as well as people's posture can only be maintained for about 15 to 25 minutes when sitting on a therapy ball, at which point the posture starts to break down. And that's when muscle fatigue develops, and then that's when people start to develop risk factors for injuries. So it's not a good long-term seating solution. If it's something for a short-term use, that's great, but for a desk where someone's going to be sitting at 8 hours a day, it's not recommended. There are several new types of seating devices coming out. On the left is pictured, I believe, a pogo stool or a wobble stool. There's all kinds of different names for these types of seating devices. And on the right, there's basically like a Swiss ball that I just showed you, but it has a firm base to it that doesn't roll around. These, like the Swiss balls, they're very good for short-term seating, like for 15-minute, 30-minute meetings, oftentimes in kind of a conference room or kind of a collaborative space. But there again, once you hit that 20 to 30-minute mark, people's posture will break down, and then they'll start to hunch, and then they're developing risk factors. So these, again, are not appropriate for a workstation where someone's going to be sitting 8 hours a day. However, they are great for short-term use. Also, treadmill desks are quite the rage right now, and I do get a lot of questions about them. A big problem with these is they're very, very expensive. And treadmills themselves, even without a treadmill desk, they're not very reliable. They don't tend to last very long. They're very maintenance prone, aside from the high initial cost. But they also greatly reduce productivity and increase errors. This has been shown over and over again in various academic research studies. It all kind of comes down to when you're walking and typing at the same time, your brain can only really concentrate on one thing very effectively. Another issue it brings up, what shoes and clothing are appropriate for a treadmill? If you're at a working environment, maybe you wear heels, but it's probably not appropriate to wear heels on a treadmill. So it kind of brings up that issue too. Overall, these still aren't recommended. You could potentially trial one of these in a hotel workstation and have people try it out. But I have yet to find an organization that is full-scale purchase treadmill desks because of this. Another great option are convertible seating arrangements, such as the one pictured. It's a great long-term option. This chair allows you to sit with your back supported, it allows you to perch out on the edge for short periods of time, and it allows you to sit either with your feet flat on the floor or up on the ring. They're very sturdy, they're very stable. These work great in office environments, and they also work very well in production and manufacturing environments, as they're very sturdy and very durable and reliable. There's all kinds of other versions of these chairs too. This is just one example. There's an ergonomic consulting company called Atlas Ergonomics, and they have done several long-term studies based on data they've collected with employees that they work with. This survey included data from almost 27,000 office employees. They collected different types of demographics such as gender, age, height, weight, and hand size. And what subjects did is they rated their discomfort by frequency and severity ratings on a 5-point scale. And there's a whole lot of results that came out of this. So what I have here is just some of the summaries of the study. But generally, females tend to have a shorter stature, a higher body mass index, and a smaller hand size. All of these characteristics contribute to higher discomfort ratings as well as loss of productivity ratings. So focus should be on wellness and ergo programs for obese workers as well as people of shorter stature. Also focus on improvements with employees that are over 6 foot 3 inches with low back pain, as this is another group that has been shown to have discomfort much higher than the typical population. A couple more of their points. Do not roll out new technology, such as standing workstations, for the entire workforce. What you need to do is trial it. There again, you can use a hotel workstation where people can kind of check out that desk for a certain amount of time each day to trial this technology, make sure it works for them, make sure they like it before you invest it for everybody. Also, this, as well as many other studies, has pointed out that training is important. It's actually critical, especially for younger workers. Older workers tend to have been around the block, I guess you could say, and they're more apt to be able to adjust their workstations. Emphasis should definitely be placed on workers that spend more than 4 hours a day working on the computer, and especially for people with smaller hands. And as said before, emphasis should not be placed on gender, but the collective risk factor profile. So to wrap up the study, really we want to look at the neutral postures and employee comfort, focus on employees that are under 5'5" or over 6'3", focus on employees with small hands, employees that have a high body mass index, and also developing an office workstation program that includes training. Everyone insured by Argent has access to a loss control consultant, and we're here to help you. We can provide reference materials, we can provide some on-site training, and we can perform assessments on challenging workstations. So please, if you have any questions about a certain workstation setup or a certain employees having discomfort or problems, please give us a call. We will be glad to help you out. I do have my contact information here if you want to reach out to me with anything specific as well at the end of the webinar. And we do have a little bit of time, so I think I will go into some kind of bonus content that I added on here. Let's look at this workstation. This is kind of unusual. At first, you can tell that this guy he's got a nice seated posture. He's reclined back. He looks very comfortable. He's not doing a lot of word processing. He's actually doing CAD drawing. So he pretty much uses the mouse. He actually, when I watched him at least, was rarely using the keyboard. So in a way, this doesn't look like an ideal workstation, but he was comfortable here, and he didn't have any issues. But if he did, look at some things and maybe think in your mind, what could you rearrange in this workstation to make this fit him better? What I suggested was moving the actual computer terminal itself somewhere else, relocating it under the desk to his right side or whatnot, and then he could bring the monitor and the riser and the keyboard over to the right-hand side so he could fit more square within there if you wanted to. But he was happy with this, and he didn't have any problems or complaints. So I made the suggestions, and if he has any problems in the future, he could certainly do that. Another one, this desk, if you notice, has a higher horizontal desktop portion that wasn't originally there, that was added at some point. But when that was added, it created a problem for the users at the workstation in that their monitors had to move to the side. They could no longer be centered in the corner like they were before. And that changed everything for them in terms of how it was set up. So they didn't necessarily have musculoskeletal complaints, but I did recommend that if they wanted to center that primary monitor back in the inside corner like it used to be, that they could develop a small notch on that top tabletop surface to clear the space the monitor needed to provide there. Also, you can see in this workstation there's several boxes and other objects underneath the desk that kind of eliminates the possibility for that employee to move her feet and have movement, which is important. So I made a recommendation to move those things out of the way. And lastly, here's another person, another interesting seated posture. The chair I showed you before that had the mesh that was stretched out and it was a warranty issue, this is that same chair. And you can see that he put a pillow underneath there. And whenever you see people put pillows and things like that on their chair, you know, obviously there's something that's uncomfortable about it, and they're trying to fix it or otherwise alter it to improve the comfort. Well, he wasn't comfortable with that mesh being stretched out. He also sits with his leg crossed, and there again, he's drafting and doing CAD drawings all day, and he touches, I believe, 1 or 2 or 3 buttons on the keyboard pretty much because he's very mouse-intensive work. So there again, he was kind of comfortable with this, other than that needing to put that pillow on there. But I was more concerned sitting on a pillow is not going to keep her pelvis in kind of a square arrangement, which often can cause a low back pain at some point. But at this point in time, he didn't have a problem with it, but I did make the suggestion to switch that around. At this time, I'd like to know if anybody has any questions that we can answer for you about Office Workstation. Okay. I'll leave it open for a couple minutes here, and like I said before, if even after the webcast, if you have questions, you can contact me or your loss control consultant that's assigned to work with you, and we can help you with problem solving any issues that come up. Okay, here's the first question right here. Why are small hands a red flag? I think a lot of it has to do with design. When you buy a computer and you take it out of the box, the mouse is the size that it is. And a lot of these peripheral devices and keyboards and whatnot, they're probably designed for the average hand, but there really is no such thing as average. In reality, there needs to be different sizes for things. If you look at some of the nicer higher-end keyboards or the nicer input devices, they actually come in different sizes. I have large hands myself, and I have a large-size mouse, and it fits much better. When I first got it, I wasn't thinking it was going to be such a difference, but it makes a big difference, and it's a much easier to use. People with small hands and just shorter stature people, I think it's harder for them to adjust and adapt to some of these things when they don't fit good, where I think taller people generally are a little bit more able to adapt and move their body around to accommodate workstations that perhaps don't fit them ideally. Okay, next question. How long will it take for an employee to get used to changes made in the workstation? And when do you make the decision that the changes did or did not work? That's a good question. I always tell people, to try to make a change. First of all, one change at a time. If I go to a workstation and I change 6 things, it's hard to tell what made the change feel better or worse. Or sometimes you might change one thing, which might be a positive, but something else you change might be a negative. So I try to only change one thing at a time, unless some things are just clearly just really problematic for the employee. I like to try to have someone live with that change for about 2 weeks. I've seen different kind of time periods cited. I've seen up to 21 days also being cited. And there's research that says you need to basically work in a workstation for about 20 to 30 days before it becomes like a muscle memory. You're not actually thinking about how you're moving. So it is also going to vary a bit on the individual. I usually tell people, like, let's try this for at least a week, and then go from there, and then reevaluate. And there again, maybe you move something higher or lower. Maybe you try it for a week and it's not successful. Maybe you just need to move it higher yet or lower yet than you did before to make that change. So it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle, and you kind of have to keep playing around with it. But that's generally how I get the best results. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions coming up.
There was a question about getting a copy of the presentation. This recording will be available on WB Connect. You just log in with your username and password in about 2 weeks. So the presentation in its entirety, the entire recording, will be available on WB Connect, as well as all of our former webinars that we have out there. So you can access any of those at any time.
Okay, we have one more question that just popped in here. If you move to a good adjustable chair, you change more than one thing. What do you look for with time frame with new chairs? I think that really depends. The biggest determinant there is how knowledgeable is the employee with this new chair. So if they got a new chair and the vendor came in and they showed them all the adjustments on the chair, and they kind of worked with them to set it up originally, and really kind of made them do it hands-on, not just gave them a flyer or a handout or some project information or said, look at our website, but actually kind of makes them, this shows them the levers, this is how it goes up, this is how it goes down, these types of things, and kind of works with them to play with the chair. I get better results doing that. People really need to play with it in a hands-on way. And yeah, they are changing more than one thing. But at that point, it's not like you're coming in and you're moving a monitor up and down or one thing like that. It's a whole new ball game, really. So people are kind of expecting to have to fiddle around with the chair a lot and make these adjustments. Whereas if you have an existing chair, they're already used to it, and they're kind of, I don't want to say they're stuck in a rut, but they're kind of stuck in a behavioral pattern where sometimes some of these adjustments, they kind of don't think they need to make them because they would have made them before if they needed to, is their way of thinking. But like I also said, almost every time I work with someone with a complaint, I'm showing them adjustments that they didn't know existed on their chair. So sometimes it's kind of a reawakening for them. So there again, I would give it, a good week or two after a new chair, and also follow up and come back and check with people. I check in with people that I've worked with before and ask them how things are going, and sometimes I can tell they've kind of played around with some more adjustments, and or sometimes they'll forget one of the adjustments, especially the seat pan moving forward and back adjustment and the tilt on that. People forget about that a lot, and that has a huge bearing on employee comfort, and especially with low back or spinal issues. It has a really big bearing. So give it time with those people, and maybe 1 to 2 weeks. And like I said, that team concept also applies to training and follow-up, just to check in with people when they do get new equipment or new workstation setups, to ask them how it's going, how it's working, if things are too high or too low, and they'll probably give you good feedback.
Chairs are actually, in my opinion, actually designed to be adjusted throughout the day as well.
Right.
So if I come into work one day with 2-inch heels and the next day I'm wearing flats, I might want to adjust that height. Or if I start to feel discomfort throughout the day, I might want to futz with the chair a little bit to find that comfort zone again. So that's and if you, what Dave said, if you do instruct the employee how to adjust the chair, it puts that control in their hands, and that's very important in the office environment, for you to feel like you have some control.
Definitely, and that was a great point that Sue just made, that, yeah, we're made to move. We're not made to sit still at all. So even something like the recline function in the chair, a lot of people, they come to work in the morning and they're really up, kind of close to their computer, and as they fatigue or different parts of the day, they want to kind of recline back. They can release that lever or play around with that. I constantly fiddle with the chair that I'm sitting in my office, and it might just be me, but I have to kind of move around a lot, and I'm more comfortable that way. Any other questions here? I don't see any other questions. Okay, well, I believe that concludes our presentation today. Thank you very much for attending, and I appreciate your being part of the audience.